Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. And the first thing I'd like to do is to congratulate you on the tremendous success you've had. Ford had an unbelievable year, but the reason they had a great year was because of you. All the designing of the automobiles, the millions of dollars spent in that capacity, the tremendous amount of publicity, all the workers that assemble the car, everything that goes together to making Ford a quality product was successful because of you. You've had tremendous success. But what is important is where we go from here. I don't care what field of endeavor we're talking about, life is full of challenges. We have a challenge at the University of Minnesota. Right now I'm writing a book titled Things They Never Told Me in the Interview. I went to the University of Minnesota and I said to the athletic director, how bad is our football team? He said, not too bad. He said, Nebraska only beat us by 10. I didn't know he meant 10 touchdowns. Nebraska beat us 84-13, Ohio State 69-18, Michigan 61-10. It goes on and on. As a matter of fact, we got beat on the average score that entire season, 47-11. And this is a true fact. We gave up more points in football than we did in basketball. And then we found out the defense was a strong part of our football team. When I took the job, Gil Brandt with the Dallas Cowboys called me and he said, don't take that job, the program's in shambles. I was on the job 1 week. I called Gil Brandt and I said, Gil, I think you underestimated the severity of our problems. I had people say to me, well, what are you going to do in that situation? I feel like the guy that owned the oil well by my hometown of East Liverpool, Ohio. And it caught on fire, and he put out a call and asked for anybody to come to try to put out that oil well fire. They came from all the big fire departments around East Liverpool, Chester, Newell, Wellsville, Salineville, Dillonville. There wasn't a single fire truck that could get within 300 yards of the fire because the fire was burning out of control and the heat was so intense. Calcutta Township had a volunteer fire department. They answered the call because they wanted a $3,000 reward. They had one fire truck, one ladder, 2 buckets of water, 3 buckets of sand, and 1 blanket. And they came down that hill, and they got within 300 yards of the fire where everybody else had stopped because the heat was so intense. They didn't stop. They didn't stop. They got right up on top of that fire. Jumped out of the fire truck, threw on the 2 buckets of water, the 3 buckets of sand, took the blanket and beat the fire out. The owner of the oil well was so impressed. He said, boy, that was a great display of courage. He said, you won the $3,000 reward. What are you going to do with the money? The guy said, first thing I'm going to do is get those brakes fixed on that truck. You've had great success. It's more difficult to get up and motivate yourself when you've had success because you just try to maintain what you have. And in this world, you get better. You get worse. You don't stay the same. It's easy for us to work. We can see progress. We can see improvement, and we don't like where we are. Never forget when I went to North Carolina State, our first game was against Syracuse University, and they had a great football team. We were a 27-point underdog in the locker room. I said, hey, we can whip them. It'll be a challenge. And they said they're going to run a 5-man line, and Bob Blanchard said, I know they will, because ain't no way 6 of those dudes will fit across the field without being out of bounds. I mean, they're the biggest football team I'd ever seen, and we went out and we won the football game, and we won 41-24, and the players picked me up on their shoulder and carried me to the middle of the field and dropped me, and, you know, I was fortunate enough to be at Ohio State. We won the national championship, but never once did I see any football team celebrate a victory like that team celebrated that one. 1 week later, we went over and played our arch rival, University of North Carolina, in our second game. And we lost a heartbreaker, 35-34 in the last 10 seconds. And I walked in that locker room after the game, and the same football team that 1 week before was so high, so elated, so excited, so happy. It was the most depressed football team I've ever seen in my life. And the same thing I'd told them the week before, I told them the next week. I said, you know, nothing's as good as it seems, and nothing's as bad as it seems, but somewhere in between there, reality falls. See, we're wonderful human beings. We have tremendous power. But the greatest power we have is the power to choose. We can choose to believe or doubt, act or procrastinate, love or hate, succeed or fail. But we also choose whether we're going to build from where we are or whether we're going to tear down. There's no easy way in this world to build without hard work, without dedication, and without a commitment to purpose. We have an awful lot of big dreams at the University of Minnesota. I have the same dream all the time. I dream of I'm at a motel with all the other Big Ten coaches. And we're around a pool, and they said, there's no such plan to determine who goes to the Rose Bowl. He said, let's put a fish in the pool. Whoever catches it will be the team that goes to the Rose Bowl in this wild dream. And they said, furthermore, we're going to let the coach that has the best chance go first. And Lou Holtz has the worst chance, he'll go last. And first thing, Earl Bruce from Ohio State jumps up, grabs a gun, and tries to shoot the fish, but to no avail. And then Mike White from Illinois jumps in there with a spear, and to no avail. And they go through Bo Schembechler, Hayden Fry, they go through all the Big Ten coaches, and nobody can catch a fish. They come to me. And with that, I get up in my dream, and I get a spoon, and I walk over, and I start dipping the water out. And they said, what are you doing? I said, we're going to the Rose Bowl. And it may be slow, it may be tedious, it may be time-consuming, but if we have a big dream, there's a way to get the thing done. The other thing I find that's important with people that have enjoyed success such as you have is because you're fundamentally sound. I think fundamentals are so important that we have a tendency to feel that, boy, they just aren't necessary all the time. But I want to tell you the greatest football players in this world are the ones that block and tackle. The greatest Rhodes Scholar is the one that starts out by learning how to read and write. To me, fundamentals are so important in everything you do in this world. And you keep things simple. One of the great advantages I have in this world as a football coach is I'm not very smart. I've got to keep my life basically simple. But I firmly believe this, that any organization that's not based on fundamental principles does not have a chance to be successful. It's like the guy that walked into the pet shop and he wanted to buy a bird. And these birds over here were $1.98 and he had about 30 of them. But over here he had one single bird that he was selling for $798. The guy said, why? He said, those birds look just alike. The guy said, well, this bird over here talks and sings. The guy said, boy, that's a lot of money, but I'd love to have that bird. He bought the bird for $798. He came in the next day. He said, the bird don't talk or sing. And the guy said, that's impossible. He said, I have the same type of bird as you do. And he said, why, just this morning, he said, my little bird got up and rang that bell. The guy said, what bell? He said, you didn't buy the bell where the bird can get the proper tune? He said, no. He said, well, the bird won't talk or sing unless you get the bell. And the bell's $38. The guy bought the bird, came in the next day, said, I paid $798 for the bird, bought the bell, and he said, the bird don't talk or sing, and he rang the bell. The guy said, well, what did he do when we ran up and down the ladder? The guy said, what ladder? He said, you didn't get the ladder for exercise, and the ladder's $43. Well, this goes on 5 days. The guy comes in the 5th day, and he said, I have $1,218 invested in that bird. He said, today the bird finally talked to me just before he died. He said, the bird got up this morning, rang that little bell, ran up and down that ladder, swung on that little swing, looked in the mirror, all the things you sold me. Just before he died, he looked over at me and he said, didn't he sell you any bird seed? People say, well, why don't more people enjoy success? Simple. Because of self-pity. Sit around and feel sorry for themselves and the plight they're in. Everybody in this world gets knocked down. As I was at the University of Arkansas, we had the best one-loss record in the history of the school, and I'm proud of that. I didn't do it myself. Shoot, we had 100,000 people contribute to it, including the fans there. But after we beat Texas, they made a commemorative stamp of Lou Holtz. And after we got beat by Houston, they had to do away with it because people kept spitting on the wrong side. You know, it's just... Well, and there's a tendency to get down and say, boy, nobody knows the trouble I've had and the problems I've had. And then the news media and other people say negative things about you without just cause. I could walk across the water and the headlines in the paper would be Lou Holtz can't swim. You know, you just... These are the things that happen, but self-pity is also self-destruction. That's why more people don't dream bigger. That's why more people don't adhere to fundamentals. As they say, boy, nobody knows the problems I've seen. I love the way the blind man coped with self-pity. The blind man was being led down the street by a seeing-eye dog, and he put all the faith and confidence he had in that dog. And they came to a corner of a busy intersection. The dog crossed against a light. The blind man didn't know what else to do, so he followed the dog across the street. As I said, it was a busy intersection. Cars swerved to avoid him, brakes squealed, and horns honked. But miraculously, the blind man and the dog made it across the street unharmed. The blind man got on the other side of the street, and he reached in his pocket and pulled out a dog biscuit to give it to his dog. An innocent bystander watched the whole thing transpire. And he went running up to the blind man. He said, sir, the dog crossed against the light and almost got you killed. The last thing you want to do is give him a dog biscuit to reward him. The blind man smiled and said, I know he did. He said, you see, I'm giving him a dog biscuit so I can find out where his mouth is, going to kick him right in the tail. Well, see, to me, when we have problems, sometimes we need to kick ourselves in the tail. You know, a year ago, I talked to you about the Orange Bowl and the problems we had, and we had a faculty rep down there by the name of Al Whitty. And I'll never forget when it looked like we were going to have a players' boycott, and everything was falling apart, and there was a lawsuit and everything else, which all worked out well. Al Whitty, our faculty rep, and who was also the dean of our law school, looked at me on Christmas Eve when we were sitting in a conference trying to get some things ironed out. And I sort of felt sorry for myself. I wasn't at home and with my family. And Al Whitty looked at me and he said, boy, I wished I could be in your situation. I said, are you kidding me? He said, yeah. He said, to be in your situation where you have the chance to prove that you can do something exceptional. When you get that opportunity, what a great feeling that must be. I love what John F. Kennedy said in 1960. John F. Kennedy, when they asked him if he would accept the vice presidency of the United States because he's young and he was a Catholic, he said, no. He said, once you accept second place when first is available, you have a tendency to do it the rest of your life. We don't want people to ever settle for second place or for second class when first is available. Our goal at the University of Minnesota this year is to go to the Rose Bowl, and people are going to say that's impossible. People say, well, that's only an impossible dream. And I believe a dream's impossible only if all you do about it is dream. With hard work and dedication, I believe you can make things happen. I want you to know we have a better chance to go to the Rose Bowl this year than 95% of the teams in the country. Better than Alabama, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Oklahoma. There's so many people in this world who have achieved things. Glenn Cunningham was burned so badly at age 8, the doctors said he would never walk again and wished to amputate the legs. Now, this is a true story. And the mother refused to allow it to happen. Well, I don't know if Glenn Cunningham ever walked again, but he sure did run. Because in 1934, in the Melrose Games, in Madison Square Garden, Glenn Cunningham ran the mile in 4 minutes and 6 seconds, which in those days were unheard of. And that same Glenn Cunningham was named the Athlete of the Century. So Shelley Mann was put in a pool at age 3, strictly because she had complete lack of use of any limbs of her body. She could not wiggle her toes, she could not move her fingers. They put Shelley Mann in the water strictly to allow the buoyancy to give her some exercise. That same Shelley Mann won 2 gold medals in the 1956 Olympics and was declared as the outstanding female swimmer in the world. And I firmly believe this to the bottom of my heart, that attitude is the most important thing in determining success. I'll never forget when I was 16 years of age, we used to swim in the Ohio River. And there were about 6 of us swimming, and somebody got the brilliant idea we ought to swim across the river. Ladies and gentlemen, from East Liverpool, Ohio, across the river to Chester, West Virginia was almost a mile in width. I couldn't even see the other side, let alone swim it. But we made an agreement that the guy finished last across the river would walk back across the bridge, get the car, drive over, and pick the rest of us up. And just before we started, my very best friend, Neville Stockdale, said, I'm not going. I said, what do you mean you're not going? He said, well, I can't swim that far. He said, I'm not allowed to swim the river anyway. He said, I'll get halfway across the river, start to drown, and my mom will whip my butt good. Well, I said, oh, Neville, you can make it. And I said, if you can't make it, I'll save your life. And he said, you do that? I said, you got my word. Now, it was important to me that Neville tried to swim because he's the only one I knew for sure I could beat. And I didn't want to get back over there and have to walk over and get the car, so I made the agreement I'd save his life. Well, we started to swim. Well, this is a true story. We got 1/4 way across the river and Nevis doing super. We got halfway across the river and Nevis doing great. We got 3/4 way across the river, and just as he predicted, Nevis started to drown. The first thing he did was call upon me to save his life. So I did the same thing you would have done if you were in my situation. I tried to pretend I couldn't hear him. I was worried about little Holtz drowning. My lungs ached, my arms were tired, and everybody else had already finished him. And finally, in desperation, Nevis Stockdale, 3/4 way across the river, begged for help, pleaded for help, prayed for help, but everybody ignored him. So he did the only thing he could logically do to save his life. He turned around and swam back. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to give you 3 rules that I'll promise you will guarantee success. I don't care whether we're talking about raising children, whether we're talking about with ourselves. These are the only 3 rules we have. Rule number 1 is do what's right. You don't have to be brilliant to know the difference between right and wrong. We just tell our squad, hey, do what's right. I don't think it's right to find a teammate's wallet before he lost it. We don't have a million different rules. Just do what you know's right. For example, I don't think it's right to work part-time. I don't think it's right to be in a messy environment without doing something to correct it. I don't think it's right to come late to work. I don't think it's right to just go through and do whatever's easy. Rule number 2, do the best you can. Not everybody can be All-American, All-Conference first team. Not everybody can be the #1 salesman, but everybody in this world can be the best he's capable of achieving. To me, you can fool me, you can fool the TV lights, you can fool the news media, you can fool the people in the stands, I tell our athletes. But when you put your head on that pillow late at night, worn out and tired, you can't fool yourself. And to me, you owe it to yourself to do the best you can, everything you do. And the 3rd rule we have with our children or anything else is treat others as you'd like to be treated. You know, happiness is not having everything go smoothly. Sometimes people think happiness is not having any problems. Sometimes people labor under the misconception that happiness is just being able to do what you want and when you want to do it. And I'll guarantee you, ladies and gentlemen, that's not true. All scientists and psychologists will tell you that happiness comes when you set a goal and you work hard in order to achieve a goal, whatever that goal might possibly be. A young man went up to Mother Teresa not long ago, and he was so enthralled with what Mother Teresa had to say that he wanted to follow her to India. Mother Teresa said, you know, there's so many problems here that you have to solve before you worry about other people's problems. Said you have an obligation to your family, to your business, and to your community. These are the things that I think sometimes we forget about. We have a tendency to idolize people that are in the limelight. The heroes in this world aren't the people that score touchdowns. The hero in this world are not the people that perform on TV. The heroes of this world are the people that genuinely make this a better place to live and care about other people. See, in life, we're not judged by perfection. We're judged by percentages. We're judged by the percentage of times that we are successful. Every scientist, every researcher that comes up with a hypothesis is not always right. A guy's considered a great athlete today if he bats 300. 3 out of 10 times he's right. The quarterback that completes 6 out of 10 passes is considered a great quarterback. We're not going to be perfect. We aren't going to be right. But the main failure that we have to fear is a failure when we say, I accepted less than the best I could do. I accepted less quality in my job, in my life, than I was capable of achieving. We have a ritual at the University of Minnesota where we get together and we say a little prayer before every game. And the prayer goes like this. Prayer said, this is the beginning of a new day. God has given me this day to use, I will. I can waste it or I can use it for good. What I do today is important because I'm exchanging a day out of my life for it. When tomorrow comes, this day will be gone forever, leaving in its place that which I've traded. Want it to be gained, not lost, good, not evil, success, not failure. In order that I should not regret the price I paid for it. because the future is just a whole string of nows. You're quality people. I appreciate the opportunity to spend some quality time with you. Thank you.